And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Okay, tomorrow morning's flying weather starting up here in the north, some IFR central eastern Arctic coast, marginal VFR down into the Brooks Range and the Yukon Flats. Otherwise, IFR here, southeast Bering Sea, about the Pribilofs down to the eastern Aleutians, and IFR pushing into the western Aleutians. You know, that big storm frontal system, we have a band of IFR stretching from the Aleutian Range there, northeast Bristol Bay, northward along the North Gulf Coast, down into the front here, the cold front, into the eastern Gulf of Alaska. IFR across the Panhandle, VFR central interior for the afternoon. IFR shifting northward there up to the southern slopes of the Central Alaska Range area. Southeastward across Manuscus, Asitna Valley, Copper River Basin, Northern Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, right on down into the Gulf, and most of the southeast coast IFR. Marginal VFR out to the west here into the eastern Bering Sea. IFR up along the Arctic coast and the Brooks Range into the northern interior valleys here, an area of IFR. VFR. IFR here pushing into the central Aleutians with the next system out there. And then for the morning hours, that area slides eastward here into the western Alaska Peninsula by Thursday morning. Areas of mostly IFR here from the eastern Seward Peninsula, Kobuk Valley area, Selawik, right on down into south central Alaska, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, covering all of the Panhandle area. Not too bad, Kodiak Island, mostly VFR, as well as portions of Bristol Bay. IFR continues up there on the Arctic coast. And that really becomes a lot more widespread for Thursday afternoon, Arctic coast down into the northern, or into the Kobuk, Koyukuk valleys, east of northern valleys there. IFR conditions now extending down across the northern Kuskokwim Valley, right in toward western Cook Inlet. Less IFR, but still hung up there along the North Gulf Coast. And the east side of the Panhandle, IFR, otherwise marginal VFR. Good VFR here, Kodiak Island into Bristol Bay. And then some IFR here from about near Atka, eastward across the eastern Aleutians here, into about Sand Point on the Alaska Peninsula. Passes for the day on Wednesday, both Anatuvik and Adigan look to be VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR. Same forecast for rainy. IFR farther to the north there, windy, starting out VFR during the early morning, becoming marginal VFR. Possibly IFR by late in the day. Same forecast for Isabel as well. Deteriorating conditions throughout the day, especially toward evening. And Mintasta also coming down there, VFR becoming marginal VFR later in the day. Tanita, though, IFR the entire day. Portage, same forecast, IFR. And for Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels here, 2,000 feet, Kodiak Island up along the North Gulf Coast, 4,000 feet down toward the Panhandle, and out to the west here, warmer air, but about 2,000 to 4,000 feet over the Aleutians. Moving on to icing, that next system spreading an area of considerable moderate rime icing here across the Aleutians, exiting Adak and Atka, pushing in toward Umak Island, Nikolsky area. During the afternoon hours, icing free here to the east of that system. And then with the big system here coming up, a lot of moisture pushing up into Prince William Sound and the western Copper River Basin, so considerable moderate rime icing there, North Gulf Coast, all the way down across the Panhandle. And the jet stream here, good southeast flow, turning southerly at about 100 knots here, right across south central Alaska, diminishing, becoming more west-north or west-southwest here over the eastern interior, ridging over the Panhandle at this elevation, 33,000 feet, northwest 95 knots across the Alaska Peninsula, and then a strong 130-knot jet there just south of this low over the western Bering there, just south of Adak and Atka. 9,000 feet, strongest winds this elevation from the central Aleutians southward, much lighter to the north as you can see. Southeast winds here with that strong, now northwestward moving low pressure area coming into the southern Gulf of Alaska. We got very strong winds here across the eastern Gulf, edging in toward the Panhandle at about 50 knots tomorrow afternoon, 80 knots out of the south-southeast here, right up across Prince William Sound. into the Talkeetna Mountains there, diminishing north of the Alaska Range. Easterlies 40 knots there over the Chukchi Sea. But at 3,000 feet up here, you got easterly winds 45 knots across the Arctic coast, portions of the North Slope. Another band south of that, east-northeasterlies of 40 knots from the Yukon Flats right out into the Seward Peninsula. And then the real strong winds here, again, over the eastern Gulf of Alaska, coming into the coastline, 55 to as high as 75 knots there, just south of Yakutat. And out to the west, more strong winds with this system here, but not quite as strong. South 45 across the central Aleutians. Turbulence, moderate turbulence here for the central and western Aleutians there. And moderate turbulence also for the North Gulf Coast, all of the Panhandle, and the Aleutian Range here to about Sitkinak, and then areas of moderate turbulence with those easterly winds here up over the northern interior valleys, and also for the western Brooks Range out to the far western Arctic coast, mostly Point Lay on down to maybe Kivalina.